Welcome to the XY Advisor Podcast, a global community of financial advisors sharing and learning with one another to drive the positive evolution of financial advice. To get involved, go to xyadvisor.com or simply download the XY Advisor app.
This series is brought to you by MetLife. At MetLife, we believe in the value of advice, and that's why we're determined to support advisors with a life insurance experience that is sustainable, efficient, and unique. So, when the unexpected happens, we're there to provide care, compassion, support, and expertise for advisors and their clients when they need it most. MetLife. Life inspired by you.
Hello and welcome to this part 4 of our 5-part series on the new risk environment for income protection as we settle in to the changes from IDII. I'm your host Fraser Jack, and in this episode our panel discusses the human side of the changes, from advisors and staff to claims teams and clients. These technical changes affect the humans involved after all. Let's dive into this episode now. Welcome back to this episode where we're really talking about the human side of the products and the policies. We've just spent a lot of time talking about the actual controls themselves within the policies, but I want to talk about some of the humans around it from both the advisor point of view and the client point of view. Let's start with the idea of the risk specialist. Now, we've got a couple of risk specialists on this particular panel, and then we've also got John, who's doing a holistic type of advice. What's the future going to hold? Tell us about what your thoughts are around risk specialists versus holistic advice and people trying to do holistic advice, John.
So I actually started in the game as a risk specialist, and I was actually a risk specialist for a long, long time. Actually, I done my apprenticeship at a risk specialist place, and I love risk. I always have, always will, and even though I'm a goal-based financial advisor, risk is a big element of proper financial advice. It's one of the key pillars of the foundations of a proper plan. What I'm finding is that risk specialists, both through legislation, education, and simply what the requirements are in now 2022, that transactional salesman 1990s kind of is nearly, let's call it dead. Yeah, let's be honest. It used to be go in there, get a quick fact find, sign them up, off you go. And we've moved. This is decades ago into where we are today. And today is a very thorough process. It is understanding not just the insurance need as per se, it's understanding the affordability, the cash flow implications, the superannuation ownership of insurance. Yes, so ownership structures. It's understanding eligible service dates. It's understanding, in some cases, medical conditions and how they are implicated, and the psychology of some of this stuff as well too. So to be a risk specialist, I believe you still need to know other areas. You still need to have a deep understanding of these other areas where maybe back in the day that wasn't necessarily the case. You could know risk and that's pretty much it. These days, if you don't understand the implications of your risk advice and the flow-on effects of that, best interest duty will probably leave you out to dry. Yeah. And therefore, which is the next one in regards to kind of casual risk writers, it's then the other side of things. If you're doing investment planning and that's all you've been doing and that's your bread and butter, but you don't understand the implications of getting the, risk insurance done correctly, the flow-on effects for that, and the once again being hang out to dry in regards to best interest duty, you could find yourself in a very, very tricky position. And we've personally taken on that, yes, I do goal-based financial planning. That's what we do. That's what we're known for. But I'm still that internal kind of go-to for that risk specialist advice and teaming. We've done it internally. And then internally having specialists within the organization that the team can kind of go to, or if clients have particular questions that they can kind of refer to. And that's where I think that that the world of risk specialists is changing. I think, to be honest with you, risk specialists that understand the indirects, who maybe are financial advisors but have now just consciously made a decision to say, I'm not doing that, I'm just knowing my stuff and doing it really well. I think they'll actually survive and actually thrive with this, because on the other side of the coin, what is there, about 18,000 advisors? If I had to kind of take a little guesstimate out of there, I would say a small percentage of risk specialists who might be willing to refer to these risk specialists to kind of team up. And I know there's a few people making a lot of good wins here. So I think the dynamic of the industry and the profession and where it's heading, it's either you know your stuff, team up and know your stuff, or unfortunately, you got to question: is this the profession you want to stay around in?
Yeah, it's definitely one. It's definitely you mentioned the word casual risk writer there, and I think that's a part that we're not going to see very much of when it comes to people being able to work. And if I go back to here, whereas in the past you mentioned the risk writer was a bit quicker and a bit easier, but there's also a lot of people that could work in as a professional but part time, which I think we'll start to lose. What are your thoughts, Cathy?
I think the way that John talked about this structuring, that's how I see it. I work in a practice with another advisor. His focus is mainly on investments, and as soon as risk comes in the door, it lands on my desk. Now, we've got a massive book of insurance clients, so it's this balance between, can you have a risk specialist who has enough work to do this on a full-time basis versus, what is a casual risk writer? Is this someone who has some insurance clients and is reviewing one a month, or are they someone who's got one a quarter? And at what point in time is it not time efficient, cost efficient, and in the client's best interest for that advisor to continually look after that insurance policy? So for me, I've got no qualms that I'm safe in what I do, because I know what I'm doing in this space. And it's the advisors who dabble in it that, eventually are going to have to make a decision as to where they sit on the fence. They're going to have to be in, or they're going to have to be out, because it's going to get too technical to be able to try and, have a foot in both camps, really.
Yeah, I definitely think it's already that technical space, isn't it? It's either, like you said, don't dabble. You're either in or you're out, and having that strong process and house view and philosophy that we mentioned previously in the episodes is really important. What are your thoughts, Serena?
For me, I began my career as a normal financial advisor and then fell in love with risk and never looked back. So it's all I've done probably for about the last 18 years. And I get referrals from lots of other financial advisors who just say, oh my God, I can't do this. It's too hard. I don't want to talk about that stuff. I don't want to know that stuff. How do you even remember all this stuff? And so I guess it's what you gravitate to. I don't gravitate to investment work. So for me, I am booked out, busy, lots and lots of referrals, clients, people that all need my help. And I did consider, whether I actually still wanted to stay in the industry a little while ago, where you think, does this still really light me up? And luckily the answer was yes. But I also thought that people aren't going to stop getting sick and dying, and people aren't going to stop needing money. And so as much as all these changes are happening, it's so, so useful for people to have older people like me around who actually have an understanding of older products, or who have a network of people around that I can ask questions to. I never sit there thinking, gosh, I know all the answers. I absolutely don't. There's been many times where Jeff and I sit and chat on a Saturday, because we're both nerds, and we talk about cases where I'm like, how do I approach this, Jeff? What do I do to make sure that we're getting the best outcome? And it's such a detailed field. It terrifies me when I see people dabble, because the damage that they can do is enormous. And you don't know what you don't know.
I have to support everything that's been said by Serena, John, and Cathy on this. Right now, it's a completely new paradigm with the wide differentiation in terms and conditions on new income protection policies from the 1st of October 2021 to the old stuff, and be able to compare what's appropriate for the client, what's not appropriate, understanding the pricing pressures. A casual risk writer who only bases their recommendation on price is unlikely to meet the best interest duty of their clients, because again, as Serena mentioned and John and Cathy have all mentioned, this is a highly specialized field. It's a highly specialized profession, and no one person's going to have all the answers. And effectively, that's why I created the team at MetLife that I did, was because I've created a risk specialist technical team called Advice Strategy that allows advisors to ring in and answer those technical queries. And I think that for people who believe that they can do it by themselves, or people who believe that they can be a casual risk writer and I'll just recommend insurance, I think they're very misguided in that process.
Yeah. I can't help notice you mentioned the word shopping on price in that grab, and that's something that I think the general public have been conditioned to do so often when it comes to insurance. And I think I love the saying that more than any other commodity, when it comes to insurance, you get what you pay for. Around that scenario of safety equipment and those sorts of things, do you really, really, really want to shop on price? And I think advisors obviously spend a lot of time talking to their clients about that and understanding, it's obviously, yes, there needs to fit into their cash flow and affordability. But John, what are your thoughts on conversations with clients around price?
Yeah, I think just with price, it's one of those ones that as probably a profession we can obviously do better as well. And this is with a collaboration on a lot of fronts, be it XY, AFA, FPA, whoever that is, and even working with government around, educating about the extensive nature or the extensive work we go through to finding the most appropriate cover for them. And then articulate, because let's be honest, I think we do that very poorly in regards to this. So, from a client's perspective, they think it's calling up, for car insurance or ringing up, compare the market or whatever it's going to be. And it's just boom, boom, and then answers there. Like, we really need to get better in articulating the value in which we go through to find the most appropriate cover, and the cover that we've spoken about here, which creates the certainty that in the event of a claim, they're highly likely to claim. And then from there, we may be able to get some ground from some traction in regards to, clients saying, well, it's not just price, because this is the other big one that a lot of people are falling into. And I know when I first started on, it was just kind of try and get the client on my books. You move back into that transactional space. Once again, 2022, that can't happen. You'll be put out to dry for that stuff. So definitely just being focused on price has an implication on best interest duty, but as well too, that's the problem. But then what's the solution as well? I think, the solution comes financial literacy, education around value. Why do we do what we do? I've got two great advisors on here, and I know they spend many, many, many hours, going through stuff to try. I can't believe Cathy's Excel spreadsheet that she did in regards to just comparing the covers. I'm thinking about coming over to see you, Kath, to do my risk protection, just to do a review. But the reality is that's what we need the consumers to see, because it's that I would, as a consumer, say, oh, look at the value. She's making sure that, they're making sure that no rock's being left unturned.
And I think on that, I've started explaining to clients that each client is a jigsaw puzzle, right? And every single jigsaw puzzle I do is different. But I need to make sure, firstly, I have all the pieces to the jigsaw puzzles, because clients will come in and they won't want to tell you exactly how much they spend. They won't want to tell you that they have high blood pressure, because they're like, oh, it doesn't matter. I manage it with medication. It'll be fine. And it's like, okay, but the insurer might want to know that, and they might want to know the other thing that makes your high blood pressure not okay, like your sleep apnea for a reason, They don't think it's important, and they don't understand why it is actually important. So, yeah, I've started explaining about, I love jigsaw puzzles. It's part of the reason that risk is something that I love doing, because it is about fitting everything together and getting it in the right order, the right place, and the pretty looking picture for the client. But it is hard to articulate when the clients just come in and say, oh, well, hold on. Firstly, the fee that I'm going to have to pay is more than I thought it would be. I then have to pay for premiums on top of that. So I want them to be the cheapest that they can be. So every single client that comes through the door, you're having that conversation. So I need to go back thinking about a few things that John said earlier about, here's a video as to why we charge the fees that we do and what we do for your fee, rather than me re-articulating that conversation every single time I see a client.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, Cathy. And while we're talking about fees, traditionally, I guess with holistic advice, John, you're able to then sort of, if it costs a lot of money to do risk, and sometimes that can be subsidised by investments and other parts of or other work you're doing with clients. How are you able to then, for risk specialists, say, do you price risk in as a true price, or do you subsidise it, or is it able to be a standalone thing?
Yeah, we still receive commission from insurance. So over these years, I'm still yet to be convinced that moving to a flat fee or a fee arrangement is the right way. And listen, there's a lot of arguments for, there's a lot of arguments against, and everyone has their own way to do things. We charge a fee for service for all of our other services. We've also got lending, a part of the organisation as well too, and we don't charge a fee for that service as well too. We believe that the remuneration structures that are for those solutions are more affordable for the client, which is probably just one of our value sets. It's just what we're trying to do, and just making it more accessible by having it through that structure. So no, we don't subsidise it. Actually, it's clearly articulated on our service agreement that we actually don't charge for that service. In saying that, that's not a blanket rule. Obviously, there's circumstances where we can't be remunerated for via commissions, and therefore we will charge a fee for those services as well. And I'm also thinking in the space of as well too that we may end up, due to the situation that we're in, moving very much into the strategy-only solution, which we haven't talked about today, where there's a lot of work in the background about figuring out how much a client needs in regards to the needs analysis and in regards to that and the appropriateness of the levels of cover. And I do think that there's a strategy-only solution that hasn't come out to market widespread that I have seen yet. And then in that space, we would be charging a fee for service for that solution.
Yeah, it's it's a very interesting piece, and I guess the idea is just to work out to be able to show the client what the real value is in that strategy piece, to be able to then justify them coming and putting some money forward. Serena, tell us about some of the work that you're doing with regards to how you charge and how you obviously just risk specialist space. How do you then make sure that you're able to provide a service that's both profitable and sustainable for you as a business, as well as affordable for the client?
Yeah, so it sort of has evolved over time, and I definitely got burnt myself as a business person many times because my helper gene is very strong. So I meet people and I just want to do the work, and to me I'm like, I know how to do this, let's just get it done. So for certain situations now I would add a fee in as well, because the commission received, so we still do receive commission, wouldn't cover costs. When I look at the cost of time it takes for everyone to pull it all together, not just me, but my team of people, we need to add a base level in there. And that's also getting a commitment from the client so that they're not wasting all of our time and shopping us around. I don't have time for that. If you're actually sitting in front of me, I will do the best that I absolutely can for you, but I don't want to be duplicated out there. That's really frustrating if that happens, and I learned that the hard way. So typically the clients that I normally are referred, I think you're often referred similar, I guess, age and demographic to yourself. So I'm typically seeing people sort of my age range. So the premium that I'm seeing, normally the commission is enough, and I don't end up needing to charge on top of that. When we're talking about claims, and I know that is something that we'll be covering off on a little bit later, I previously didn't charge anything for claims. And for clients where I've written the work and I've received commission along the way and it's all worked perfectly, I'm not charging them anything for that because I have been paid along the way. If it's someone that I have purely just met and I'm stepping in to clean up an enormous mess, and and it's a results outcome, I've had to look at how I can manage that, because some of these things take a lot longer than you'd think. And happy to talk about that a little bit further, maybe later in the conversation today.
When MetLife's gone around and surveyed various advisors, commissions are, what we found is that fee for service, as the premium increases, fee for service becomes an option for clients. If the premiums are small, commissions allow clients to amortize the cost of advice over the duration of the policy. And so what you're finding is that depending upon the client's circumstances, some of them have no problem going into their pocket and paying a fee for service. Others basically say, I can't pay the additional, and a commission-based arrangement is perfectly acceptable to them. And I think having that option available to clients, a fee for service or commission based upon both the advisor's business model and the amount of work they put in, as well as the client's affordability situation, I think is absolutely necessary.
Yep. Now, I did want to go into that claim conversations as well. Serena, you mentioned that sometimes people come to you to do a claim, and they haven't been, you haven't been the previous advisor, and you got to create, start again. Tell us about those conversations with clients around charging a fee for a claim.
Well, that's only something that I've done recently. And so previously I just did it. And the reason I do so many claims is I find I learn something every single time I do one, even more so when it is a mess. And I'm not talking about a medical mess, I'm talking about like a technical mess. So normally now when I'm looking at a claim, I try and assess, is it a simple claim? Is it death, income protection? What are we actually working with? And how much time is going to need to go into it? How many insurers are involved? What are the definitions we're looking at? And also what's proportionate and fair in terms of their overall cost? Because I think all of us on this group know that at times there are others that will charge quite a high fee to help out or to do the work. And that's, I'm not trying to gouge, I'm just actually trying to cover the cost for the work that we're doing. So if I'm spending, 10 hours a week doing that work, I'm not spending 10 hours a week doing other work. And as a business, I still need to pay my staff, pay my costs, and all of those types of things. Plus also recognizing that the client or the person is getting an enormous tangible outcome. I've kept a spreadsheet over the last 8-9 years of all of the claims that I've done, and I've separated it by gender, type of claim, and where they came from. Were they one of mine or were they someone else? And it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that would be an interesting spreadsheet. Jeff, what are your thoughts with regards to do you have any stats there, I suppose, what I'm after, around claims, around, the amount of time and effort and energy that goes into each claim?
I wish I did. The industry stats on time, energy, effort has been quite sparse. APRA's tried to provide some general information on this at a macro level, but it's been difficult to actually see claims duration success, and the rest are based on that stuff. So I know that APRA's done some initial work on this. I haven't been able to find the details enough to provide a quality comment on it yet.
Yeah, I've always wondered too, within the new products that are coming on, of whether they're actually going to create more headaches at claim time. In what way
would you think that's, Fraser?
Well, just if the older products were more certain around, you're going to get paid this, you're going to get paid that, then they would be maybe easier to administer at claim time.
When we think about the claim process, normally the process is look up the policy document, get the medical reports from the doctors, interview the client, get the banking details. That's been fairly consistent, and the process, and again, as John's mentioned in previous podcasts, often the biggest difficulty is engaging with the medical professionals and getting the appropriate information in a timely fashion. So yes, that's been an issue at underwriting stages, but it's also an issue at claim stages. What we found is that once the insurance company informs the medical practitioner that this is for one of their clients, in order for them to receive a benefit, the turnaround time usually improves significantly. But it's getting that relevant information to sit back and say, do we have the documentation? Yes, we do. Then we can make the payment. That's been often the biggest inhibitor to making sure the right person, right time.
Yep. Fantastic. Serena?
One of the things that I would really reflect on is the timing of the work that you do can have some pretty big flow-on consequences, particularly when you're looking at buybacks. So making sure that as a business, you've done all you can to trigger things at the right moment, so that if there is an opportunity down the track for those buybacks and things to flow on, that they do. And part of that also is making sure that the information is correct in the first place. So sometimes I'm sure we've all known people who go by a slightly different name. If their name is Joe, their real name might be Giuseppe or whatever it might be. And I've had a couple of cases where we've had to spend quite a bit of time just backtracking to actually make sure the person's properly identified. So there's all the detail comes out at claim time. Every single thing you could think of, it is detailed, and it's not because the insurer is being difficult. It's because they have to make sure that they're paying the right person.
Yep. Fantastic. John?
Listen, claims are a very, very interesting one, because I think that there's this whole managing the client's emotional situation, which I think is our role. We've got the relationship with. But then sometimes I think are we doing a bit too much? And I found myself doing that. So I don't know about the other advisors on here, but we're now saying that any kind of long-term claims or potential long-term claims that we're outsourcing those, and there's a few kind of claims specialists that are in the XY community, for example, where we're partnering up with them to then refer that out. I would rather do that than obviously refer that out to a lawyer in most circumstances. I think an advisor with claim experience and understanding is way better suited for the client. And then just owning the relationship, which is more around getting them through that difficult time, and setting the expectations around timeframes and what's to be expected, and continuing to hold hand. So back in the day, we would sit there and do hours and hours of work. We've had a few long-term claims that I should have charged probably 20 times more than I did, but it is what it is, and I'm sure many people have those stories as well too. But we ended up getting to a solution which we would have a yearly fee. So what would happen is that we would get into a scenario where we'd kind of say to them, listen, this kind of arrangement will cover you for X amount of time, and then anything more than that period of time. And we weren't necessarily saying it on numbers. It was more on years. So if this would take, say, longer than 6 months or longer than 12 months, it would trigger on a subsequent fee that we would need to charge you. Then it became a little bit hard to administer, and then it was just put in the too hard basket with everything else going on in our profession. So we found the best thing for us is that if we think that the claim is simple, we will take that on internally. And then if it's got any kind of complexities to that, we will stay as the kind of relationship manager and then coordinate those out. And 10 years ago, that wasn't even available. I don't think it even is around. But, as people probably know in the XY community, there are services that now do that.
Yeah, it's been an interesting time, isn't it? It's all changing, and you're absolutely right. But there's a lot of time and effort that goes into these claims, and I think the idea around the experience, or that we've got a lot of experience around of these particular claims, and I think it'd be a shame to lose very much of that experience. And I think that's what's probably going to be happening with the people moving out of the industry as the numbers drop, is we're actually going to lose a lot of years of claims experience.
And this is the other thing around Fraser, around innovation. So hopefully there's people on here that are listening that may be exiting the industry, that there could be another role that's being played out, and that's a role of this kind of claims assessment and management and all of this stuff as well too. And I think there's a lot in regards to the ongoing support of the licensed financial advisors. Like we have a community of paraplanners, and like we have a community of support staff. Well, do we have a community of specialists that are practicing advisors that some way or some way can continue to contribute? Because there are some great risk advisors out there with so much experience. And, I've got a young team, and trying to kind of link those up would be absolutely amazing. And in these particular times, I reckon they know better than most.
Yep, couldn't agree more.
Fraser, one thing that I've realized from the APRA stats is that when an advisor is involved, the dropout rate for a claim is reduced significantly. So the time, energy, and effort that the advisor puts in to ensuring the client gets through the process ensures that, from whether it be death or TPD or trauma or income protection, that more clients go through the process and they don't sit back and say, I've had enough, I'm going to drop out. And when we compare the work that an advisor does versus them going it alone, whether it be through the direct to insurance policies, the group policies, the stuff through super, advisors add an incredible amount of value by allowing the client to navigate the process to getting them that claim payment.
Yeah, it is interesting, the difference between the advised and non-advised in the APRA stats. Just on that though, that's a really interesting point, because if the stats are so different, why, how do we get there? How do we get to that point where we've got clients that are not getting their claims paid because maybe we're missing a person in the middle?
I think also you would need to bear in mind some of the claims that aren't paid shouldn't be paid. Potentially, if someone comes to an advisor, and I received one yesterday where someone sent me some hospital records that happened in the last couple of weeks, and they're saying, this has just happened, can you suss it out and see if we're eligible for a claim? So at times people might be lodging a claim thinking that they're eligible when really a Band-Aid was sufficient.
Yeah, and so the advisor cuts that off at the pass.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for being part of this episode. We were talking about the actual humans involved in the process and with regard to the products. I look forward to catching you all in the next episode.
While care has been taken in preparing this material, MetLife Insurance Limited does not warrant or represent that the information, opinions or conclusions contained in this presentation are accurate. The information provided is general information only and is current at the time of production. To the extent permitted by law, MetLife does not accept any responsibility or liability arising from your use of this information. The information about MetLife Life Insurance is general only and does not take into account your personal situation, needs, or objectives. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional advice and should not be relied upon as such. MetLife recommends that you obtain independent and specific advice from appropriate professionals before implementing a financial strategy, including reading any relevant product disclosure statements and terms and conditions. Before deciding whether to acquire or continue to hold any of our products, please read the PDS available at metlife.com.au. And for the class of consumers who the products are likely to be suitable for and any conditions around how the product can be distributed, please read the target market determinations for the products available at metlife.com.au as prepared by MetLife and Equity Trustees Superannuation Limited. Life insurance products are issued by MetLife Insurance Limited, ABN 750042748882, AFSL 238096, and Equity Trustees Superannuation Limited, ABN 50055641 757, AFSL 2229 757.